Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Mark from SolarGames, and today we're going to talk about a topic I kind of actually missed until recently. Some people reminded me about this thing or told me about it for the first time. Guys, you need to tell me these things. I'm not like trolling Twitter, X, Triple X website, whatever, all the time. So I miss all this stuff. But apparently, Mark Rosewater, made a post last Monday about how draft was going to die and the economic forces are pushing draft away, and that's why we don't have draft boosters anymore. That's why the play booster thing was announced. We're not killing draft. It was just that it killed itself, and nobody wants to reduce limited play, but there's nothing to play if there's no money in it. Basically, that's what he's saying, right? By the way, I don't know if you guys have gone to the new Twitter. I haven't been there since, honestly, the whole switch over to the name X. But I noticed, like, on the webpage, there's like a big ass X on the top left corner of the page. And dude, it's like a terrible UI design, because the whole time I thought I was supposed to hit that button to close the page. But that button just gives me more X. So wait, maybe that's like really smart, because like every time you try to exit X, you just get more of it. Nice job, Elon. Okay, anyways, so kind of thinking about this topic a little bit, right? And listening to like the guys on MTG Goldfish actually talk about this. I really got me kind of thinking about some of the things too. I think like Richard on MTG Goldfish was absolutely right about what happened here. I don't think anybody, R&D, Wizard of the Coast, Hasbro, whoever, and like I like how Amaro like nowadays has to say WotC/Hasbro, because he knows everyone's like, oh, WotC's good, but Hasbro's really evil, and they're trying to like get all the money out. And he's like, no, guys, everybody at Wizard of the Coast and Hasbro do not want to kill limited, but you did. So like, I don't care about why, how, who didn't do what, but the reality is, well, draft is kind of dead, and the future of draft, whatever that may be, is still up in the air. But the current way, the way that we've been playing for 30 years, is gone, right? And whether you like it or you don't like it, whether you think it's a good thing or whatever, whether you think Magic should just be about Commander forever, everything's Commander, that's up to you. But to say somebody else's format, somebody else's way of playing the game shouldn't exist in this format or in this environment, I think that's just doesn't make any sense. Now, I understand the economic forces, that the money, all that stuff, but realistically though, is Wizard of the Coast actually losing money? I think they're saying I'm not making enough money. I've realized I can print cards differently, print less cards, sell them for more expensive prices, and get more money, right? So economic forces say don't print draft boosters because it's more material, heavier to ship because there's more cards. And honestly, like players after they draft, like you have a bunch of draft chaff they just throw away anyway. So in some ways, it's also bad publicity for your game if you go to the dumpster, you find a bunch of like Magic cards in there, right? But that's beside the point. It's not like anybody else officially dumps Magic cards in a real dumpster or anything like that. It's just players can't do that, I guess. Part of this is, though, I feel like very vindicated, right? So when this whole news came out, I was like, hey guys, like they're killing draft. It's pretty intentional. I got a lot of comments, feedback, whatever, saying, hey, no, that's not actually true. This was all focused on something else, or hey, this is just better format anyways, or better format of selling cards anyways, or oh, there's they're catering to draft and set boosters. Look, guys, they're killing draft. It's pretty obvious. At the very minimum, they're saying to drafters everywhere, if you want to draft this game officially from us, you're gonna have to pay premium for it. So honestly, guys, if you're a drafter, I don't know why you don't buy repacks. I think you should go buy repacks. I think that's honestly the best way to enjoy the game now, especially if that's really what you need anyways. You want to do the drafting, repacks probably what you want to do. Yes, you're not going to get the best cards, but you're going to have a pretty good time, I think, doing the drafting things, right? Plus, anyways. The other comment that Morrow made in that Twitter post, which I think is kind of interesting, is he mentioned like how draft was kind of on its way out and it just didn't make sense economically, right? I think this is really interesting because, while I do agree that having one booster is probably like honestly simpler, it's easier, it's kind of how other games do it anyways. Now, Magic does have a bunch of other lines still, like collector's boosters that's drastically different from draft. that's kind of beside the point, right? So somebody I think on the comment was mentioning to me like, hey, you know what? Other games have a ton of product lines too. You got like Yu-Gi-Oh's have tins, the booster boxes, whatever, like starter decks, that kind of stuff. I get it, but think about it this way, right? First of all, Magic doesn't have starter decks anymore. You got jump starts, which are kind of still randomized starter decks. Imagine you get a starter deck, but you don't know what you're going to get, right? That's kind of like what a jump start is. In addition to that, the problem with Magic is you don't know where you're going to get your variants. Like if I just pick out any random Magic player at an LGS and I say something like, hey, the showcase glitter foil of this card, where do I get it? They're not going to know. And that's the real problem, I think. It's not the fact that we have like many different products, right? It's the fact that like there's so many different products and all the products have different drop rates, and getting this card is like impossible here. Or if I want an art card, it's got to be set booster. But if I want this commander rare in a foil full art, it's got to be a collector's booster. But if I want the full art not foil, then I can get it in a draft booster. Like it's bullshit like this that makes it really confusing for all the players. It's not really that there's so many product, problematic. It's the fact that there's so many products and you still don't know where you can get what you need, right? Obviously, if you buy singles, all this problem goes away. But for somebody who's like, let's say, just going there, I want to open a pack, they have no clue what they're going to look for, right? So that's realistically why it's confusing the whole time anyways. So there's that. I think having one booster box is honestly long-term probably the smarter way to do it. I would love to see collector's booster go away, but I also know that now that, Hasbro, Wizards of the Coast is kind of high off of this like high income earning on their draft boosters, they're not going to let that go away unless they're going to charge what, $250, $300 for draft boosters. And we're getting pretty close, right? Collector's boosters are like 200, let's say like retail, it's like $200, 220. Your draft boosters, your play boosters are going to be about like 150. So we're getting pretty close. You're really slamming up against that $200 range for a booster box. Either way you go, collectors or play boosters. So I guess they're achieving their goal. Wizard of the Coast is saying everybody who wants to play Magic are going to play Magic at this cost. You can't get a cheaper option anymore. There's no other way. Basically, that's where we're here, right? But the other problem is like economic forces pushing draft boosters out. I mean, the question really I have is like, well, how do we get here? What happened to push draft boosters out of the picture? Well, we created set boosters. There was no set boosters before this, and set booster was created by Wizard of the Coast. And the creation of the set boosters created a problem, right? And that problem is basically players, a lot of people, probably myself included, realize the value of a set booster, the value inside a set booster pack, whatever, is much higher than draft booster. Like it's not even comparable what the difference is between the two products, right? To the point, basically, it didn't make any sense to open draft boosters unless you're drafting, right? Now, if there's only one product anyways, you didn't really have a choice. The people who are going to open packs for cards are opening draft just as much as the people who are going to open packs for drafting, right? But when you're offered two different choices, when stores, whales, big, like people who can spend a lot of money are offered 2-3 different choices, they're going to open different products. And that's basically where we are, right? So it's not necessarily that like the draft boosters were unpopular. It's that basically because they were offered different options and people looked at like the different options saying what makes sense, what doesn't make sense, set boosters and collector's boosters in many, many, many cases for many people who were just opening them for cards made a lot more sense than draft boosters, right? And that's where I think it really was the difference. I think one person actually commented on a previous video was that it's shocking that when they introduced the draft boosters, if they really cared about limited and play, that they didn't decrease the price of draft boosters. Imagine a case where draft boosters was like, let's say $90, almost 100. They introduced set boosters at 120, 110, okay? And then they immediately said, hey, all draft boosters are gonna be $50. Yeah, we're not gonna include like all the showcase, special art, whatever. You're not gonna get any of that stuff, right? No Phyrexian text, whatever, in your draft booster. But, maybe not even foils. Take all the foils out. We don't need that, right? But you're gonna be able to just draft and it's gonna be cheap. Now, if you want all the special case, foil, whatever in every pack, go to set boosters or beyond, collector's booster, etc. That's not what they did. Instead, they did this model, which is it costs basically the same, but one is way better than the other one if you consider things like the list slot, all the extra rares. It became basically a no-brainer, right? But I think really there's another problem at the core here. Wizard of the Coast is misunderstanding the amount of money they make and like what is the actual player base, right? So they think if, for example, we sell $2 million worth of draft boosters, right? But we sell $10 million worth of set boosters, there's got to be more players who want set boosters, right? That's the logical conclusion that Wizard of the Coast made. The reality of this, and this is again my theory, not truth, but it's my theory, is that I think there's actually a lot more people who are opening set boosters. Absolutely, there are more boxes consumed, but I don't think the total number of people opening set boosters is actually greater than the total number of people playing draft. So it's like this, right? So like, for example, you guys know on my channel, I used to do mass box openings. Pretty much as soon as I realized the value difference between set boosters and draft boosters, I basically stopped opening all draft boosters. I didn't open any draft boosters. I would go in 45, 48 set booster boxes for each set just to have enough cards to open for the sales stuff I was doing online, right? And think about it. I'm one person. That's a shit ton of cards. I can't go through all that stuff anyways. So of course I'm buying way more than I would if I was just drafting. Imagine you as a drafter buying 48 booster boxes for draft. You would never go through that, right? Like you could draft every day until the next set and you would not go through 48 boxes of draft. That's the reason. You could have many people, whatever, but each drafter takes 3 packs. If you're playing sealed, you take 6 packs. You're not going through like the boxes in the quantity I'm doing that, right? And stores are doing the same thing. So when stores didn't have a choice, they opened draft boosters for singles, of course. But when they had a choice to open set boosters or draft boosters and they cost about the same again, right? They're going to open set boosters for singles. And that's why it looks like the consumption of set boosters was much higher than draft. But I can tell you, like a lot of times I go to stores and people who are buying like actual boxes, they're buying draft. They don't want to get set because set, you can't draft with it. A lot of players, especially kind of like a hardcore, diehard Magic players, they don't really want set boosters because they can't use it for anything. They can't draft with it. They can't do anything with it, right? And as people kind of get more really deeply involved with Magic, limited becomes more popular as a format for players. So like think about it this way, right? I believe that if you go casual, obviously Commander is going to be your like where you kind of end as your like ultimate casual format. But if you go more competitive, a lot of players, they do really like drafting limited formats. That kind of format is really nice, even playing ground, especially drafting, where it feels like your skill is definitely more valuable than your luck, right? Obviously, constructed format has this similar allure, but it's a little bit more expensive and sometimes cost prohibitive for some of these players to get into it. Whereas draft, like $20, whatever, right? You get into a draft, you can just go and you can really prove yourself in there. So I think there's actually a lot more players playing draft, and Wizard of the Coast just doesn't realize it because they're not buying as much product. And because a different alternative product was introduced, a lot of that is being consumed by stores, myself, these kind of people. It looks like there's way more interest in set boosters when that's actually not true. And so this is where it gets really into an interesting point, because I believe that with this whole play booster situation, Wizard of the Coast is going to bleed players, especially if, and we talked about this before, but there are a lot of up and coming games out there. If there's a good alternative to Magic, those players that feel disenfranchised by Wizard of the Coast and all the things they're doing are just going to choose a different game. If they're, for example, those games offer draft at a very a good value, then they're going to be drafting in those games and basically skipping out Magic altogether. Especially for drafters or limited players, they don't really have a huge collection that they care about. Usually after you draft, a lot of these players, they sell back whatever they get from the draft back to the store, right? Because again, they're just trying to go infinite. They're trying to just keep drafting every week and use their winnings, use the cards that they drafted to be able to fund and fuel their next draft. And that's what they really care about. They don't really care about like, I don't know, holding a lot of cards to then build decks. Especially nowadays, who cares about modern cards, right? Like everyone's like all these cards are going to lose value if you hold them. You might as well just get rid of them anyways. So that's where a lot of the thoughts for these guys are. And so I think like, look, is draft truly dead format? If that's true, then tell me like, or explain to me why Cube is so popular. In fact, I would say Cube is like one of the most popular informal formats. And it was more on Arena. I think when the Cube event happened, a lot of my friends who basically don't even play Arena got on Arena. They were inviting me to go try it and check out their cubes and stuff like that. So I do believe drafting and this whole concept of limited is actually very, very popular. And so I think Wizard of the Coast is making a huge mistake by getting rid of it, or at least pricing some of these players out to the point where, I don't know, long term, short term, yes, they're going to make more money because some of these drafters are kind of like stuck. They have no choice. They have to pay $150, almost double what they used to pay for the same experience. Long term, though, they may find that the experience sucks, right? Like we talked about before. Having more rares, having more variants could be bad. Or if Wizard of the Coast says, hey, we have to tune these rares down, now the rares suck, that also feels bad. So like it's bad on both ends, right? So for people who are opening packs, if you're opening packs that, I don't know, do for constructed, imagine if 90% of the rares suck because they feel more like common uncommons. That's also not good, right? So in both cases, the drafters don't like it. The collectors, the investor, whatever you are, constructed players may not like it either. So I think long term, it's gonna potentially be a problem for Wizard of the Coast, and that's really sad because I think like in a time when Wizard of the Coast is really trying to figure out different ways to survive, they are making more and more stupid moves. And just like Richard said on MTG Goldfish, I think it's really interesting that I don't think Wizard of the Coast really intended for this outcome, but the decisions they make and kind of like different choices that they did make led to this point, right? They're not intending to say we're going to kill draft, but by introducing set boosters, by introducing collector boosters, by pricing them the way they did, by not dropping like draft boosters down to a lower tier, they've created the situation where they kind of have to kill draft, right? Can you imagine if draft was much cheaper? I'm actually kind of curious if that would have made more people want to draft as a really easy entry thing into Magic. Imagine like drafting costs, I don't know, $10 still. That would be a huge, crazy, different change. That could have been very, very positive for Magic as well. So that's all I have to say on this topic. I think I've beaten it to death. I'm not going to talk about draft boosters being dead anymore. Let's see what happens in the future with play boosters. It's still unknown. Maybe it's really fun. Maybe it's really great. I'm inclined to think that the first couple play boosters are going to be pretty good. But after that, it's just going to degrade like everything in Magic. And it's not going to be as good as the previous one, or Wizard of the Coast realized they've put too much good cards in the play boosters. They have to take some out. That's what I'm afraid of long term. That's going to do it for me for today. I'm Mark from SolarGames. Stay classy.